Hello, everybody. So in this video, I want to talk about something that I think is very interesting and hopefully very helpful for you. But what happens when you connect to a lab network and the internet at the same time from your computer, your laptop, or whatever? So I see this a lot at school where students all of a sudden can't connect to one or the other. Let's take a look at what's happening and how some basic networking knowledge helps us out. All right, so here in my office, by the way, we're right here. Probably might hear all the buzzing from all the devices, but I have 3 routers and 2 switches. There's my console cable connected to my computer. We do not need to worry about that. But here's my Ethernet, my wired Ethernet cable, that yellow cable right here. And we actually have this switch S1 is connected to the gigabit 00 port on router R1. Let me show you the logical topology. So here we are. This is my computer right here. We can talk more about that. Connected to switch 1 connected to router R1. Now these routers have been already configured. I've got routing going, so everything has full reachability. All right, so let's look at router R1 here. Okay, it has a port 192.168.1.1. Okay, and it is that interface is connected to switch S1. Okay, so my computer right here. Let's bring it up. There's my Mac. And I have my Ethernet port, got an Ethernet cable that connects to that same switch. Okay. So what this means is I have now configured statically, manually, that Ethernet port to have an IP address 192.168.1.100 subnet mask default gateway, which is the router. So I'm a member of this same network, just like router R1's 192.168.1.1 interface. We're both on the same network, and it's my default gateway. Okay. Now, if this is all we had, if I didn't have any other interfaces connected, wired or wirelessly, no problem. Okay. All my packets that were not on this local network here, but for any other networks would be sent to the default gateway address, router R1, and it would route them to wherever it needed to go for this network. But this is what tends to happen. Okay, a lot of us also have a Wi-Fi connection, and sometimes we plug our computer into what, like I'm doing here, into one of the lab routers, and all of a sudden things aren't working. I expect to be able to reach these networks, and it's not. What's happening? What's the problem? Okay, or it could also be that I can reach these devices, but I don't have internet connectivity. Okay, well, let's take a look at what the problem is and how to resolve it. All right, so the problem is I'm actually connected to 2 different networks. Okay, I have 2 different default gateways. I have one, which is the 192.168.1.1 address. Okay, and that's going to allow me to get to any of these networks here. 192.168.1.0. Well, that's actually my directly connected network. I don't need the router for that. I have an IP address for that. But it allows me to get to the 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 networks. Okay. But as you can see here, I also have a Wi-Fi interface that's up. And it has a different default gateway, of course, actually one that can actually get me out to the internet. Okay, so this will allow me, I want to use this for all other IP addresses. Okay, here's the problem. When I, let's say, go to Google, this is one of Google's IP addresses. Problem is, which way is my computer going to send the packet? Is it going to send it to this IP address or this IP address as the default gateway? Okay. So actually what it does is it says, this is my default gateway, or this is my default gateway, does an ARP request to get the MAC address and forwards this packet to the MAC with encapsulated in an Ethernet frame with the MAC address of one of these 2 routers. But which way does it go? Okay. Well, sometimes, depending on my environment, and we'll talk about this in a moment, okay, this works, but that's great, but I can't get to any of these devices. Or, hey, I can get to these devices, but I can't get to anything out in the internet. What's going on? All right, so here's a couple of quick fixes. One, of course, is, hey, why not just disable your Wi-Fi connection? And sometimes that's all I tell the student to do. Let's just do that just so you can get going. Well, that means you don't have any internet connectivity on that device, okay? Which may not be a problem if you're just doing a lab. Another fix might be, well, what if we remove the default gateway here? Yeah, that would probably work, okay? But there's some other stuff you have to do, okay? And we're going to do that anyway, but I don't like this because we're going to have to do something other anyways to get to these addresses, and that's going to be configuring a static route. So I don't like this. Okay, we got to do something else anyway. Not a good fix. Okay, let's do our fix. Let's leave everything alone. Okay, but let's control what goes where. So one thing we're going to have to do is set up some static routes to get to these two remote networks. Or let's say anything that's 192.168, anything, we want it to go out through this interface. This is what we'd have to do for fix number 2 as well. The other thing we want to make sure we're doing is we want to make sure our computer prefers this as the default gateway, okay, or prefers. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well as far as Mac OS. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me show you the problem and how to do all this. Okay, so I'm going to move this out of the way. Let me get rid of that. Okay, so let me do a couple of things here. I'm going to bring up my network connections here. Okay, and I'm also going to bring up my terminal here so we can see a few things. All right, so to show you, right now, actually, I have this problem. All right, if I can ping my default gateway on my local network. Okay, again, if I just want to show you what I'm talking about here, let me bring a few things up here. So just so you know what we're looking at here. Okay, so I can ping this default gateway, okay, because I have an IP address on that network, okay. So let's ping 192.168.1.1. We can see it's successful. Now, again, why is that successful? Let me go to my network connections here. Let me go right here. Here's my Ethernet, wired Ethernet connection, and I'm on this network, okay. I have a device on that network. Okay, so that's not a problem. All right, but can I ping other devices on that network? Can I ping this router's 2.2 or this router 3.2? Let's take a look. Okay, we're going to see that. Nope, that's not working. And of course, if that's not working, then this isn't working. Okay, but can I ping Amazon? That's working. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at what we can do here. All right. The first thing that I want to do is in my environment, I want to make sure my Wi-Fi connection is gets a priority. So how do I do that on a Mac? On a Mac, what I do is if this wasn't at the top, I can actually go here, this little down arrow here, and I can say set service order. And notice it's at the top. Now, if I want to change that, I would just move it to where you make sure it's at the top and click OK. All right. So since I'm going to leave this alone, since yes, it's already set as my priority. Real world, like at home, At home, I would actually make my wired Ethernet connection priority. Why is that? This is full duplex. Okay, I don't have to share the bandwidth with anybody. When I'm on a Wi-Fi network, I'm having to share bandwidth with whoever else is on that same Wi-Fi network. Okay, all right, so that's okay. All right, so let's take a look at my IP addresses. So I'm just going to do ifconfig here. Like I said, I'm on a Mac. So let's look at a couple of things here. Let me make this a little bigger here. Come on, there we go. All right, so let me go to the top here. Should see, yeah, so here is this is my wireless connection. Now I have this as a zone ID, but this is actually uniquely identifies my local interface on my computer, EN0. Okay, and this is the IP address. That's my wireless connection there. If I scroll down here, you'll see EN6. Okay, that's actually my wired connection. Okay, so those are important to make note of. Okay, especially this EN6 right here. Okay, why is that? Okay, because what we are going to do is we are going to create, first of all, a static route to our 192.168.0.0/16, meaning all of these static route to send anything beginning with 192.168 out our wired interface. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. But before I do that, let me show you something I think kind of cool here. I actually have two default routes, right? So as we have my default route on my Wi-Fi network and a default route on my wired network. Let me show you what that looks, how I can tell on a Mac. Okay, it's a little simpler on Windows, just ipconfig, but what I'm going to do is netstat-rn, basically looking at my routing table, my local routing table on my computer here. And I'm going to say grep default. How do you spell default? I think I spelled that right. All right. Look at this. Do you see I have two default routes? Okay. And we can see those are kind of like the exit interface. I sometimes think of it like that, but the zone ID. EN0, there's my wireless and there's my wired. Okay, so what I want to do first is I'm going to create a static route to send anything to that 192.168.0.0 networks over here, any of that stuff, move that out of the way. I want to send that out this interface right here. Okay. And the way I do that is this. So this is how I do it on a Mac. Okay. Sudo, I got to be I have to have the privilege level allows me to do this. Route-n add -net. And what I'm saying is anything beginning with 192.168, anything that has those first 16 bits in it, send it out the interface EN6. Okay, I want it to go out this interface right there, my wired interface. Remember, that's my wired interface. Okay. Okay, now it's going to ask me for my password. Oops, I think I typed it in wrong. Did I get it? I think I did. All right. Okay, so actually, how can I check to make sure that that got in there? I can do netstat-rn again. This time, grep means I'm going to filter some information. I only want to see things that begin with 192.168. Okay. And did it get in there? Yeah, right there. There it is. That's the route there, and it's going out EN6. Okay. All right, so that's looking pretty good so far. All right. And the other thing that we have to make sure is that you have my internet connectivity, and that gets priority. Packets go that way. I've got my Wi-Fi here is prioritized. So let's try a few things now. Okay, first of all, can I ping 192.168.1.1? Make sure I didn't break anything. Yeah, that's still good. How about those other devices now that I weren't able to ping before, like the router here, 2.2 or 3.2, these interfaces on those routers, I wasn't able to get to them before. Can I ping them now? Ah, that's looking good. Yes, I can, which means I can SSH or Telnet into those devices. But did I lose my internet connectivity? I don't think so, because the Zoom meeting's still working. So, but let's make sure. Let me ping Google. Okay, so now I've got everything working. And again, just to kind of reiterate what we did here. Okay. Let me kind of go back here and bring this up here, but show you what we did here. Let me bring this up real quick here. So what we did is this. I created a static route. Okay, matter of fact, I could show you all of this together. Move that over. Okay, so we did a few things here, right? One thing I did is I created a static route right here that says, hey, be sure, anything for these networks, don't worry about the default gateway, send them specifically out the wired network. But that's all I have out that lab network. But anything for any of this, just send it out my wired Ethernet network. Okay, and that's what I wanted to do. So it goes out this wired network. The other thing that we did, I'll move this out of the way. The other thing that we did was I made sure that my Wi-Fi connection is prioritized. I set the service word. Remember doing that, right? So I made sure my Wi-Fi connection has priority. Now, there's other ways to do this kind of stuff. I like this only because that way I'm not having to change things back the way I wanted it. When, I don't like messing, leave the default gateways alone. But let's just control that routing. So what we've done here, just to reiterate, we still have 2 default routes. Okay, that didn't change. Okay, remember we saw our 2 default routes here. Okay, we still have our 2 default routes. All we're doing, though, is once we added this static route, we've now said, hey, anything for this network, specifically send out our wired interface. Okay. And just to make sure that all of our internet traffic goes out our Wi-Fi interface towards our ISP, we made sure that this interface, EN0, okay, that it has priority. Yeah. All right, I hope this helped explain a few things. Again, there's always the quick fix if you're in the lab environment. And if you don't need internet connectivity, just disable your Wi-Fi connection. But know how to do this. Hopefully it helps bring networking together. It's those same basic networking concepts. Okay, no magic behind the box or anything like that. All right. Hope this video helped. And for those students of mine, look forward to seeing you in the lab.